Joining us now is Roxanna Islam, who's the head of sector and industry research at TMX Verify. Thank you so much for your time, Roxanna. We're talking about the crypto ETF space. So talk to us about what you're seeing right now out there.
Yeah, Sam. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's great to be here. Right now it's a very exciting time, actually, because we are seeing the first wave of spot altcoin ETFs launch. And I think this is just the beginning of more to come. So right now we have US spot ETFs for Solana. We have a Grayscale product and a Bitwise product. And Canary also has products out for Litecoin and Hedera. So it's big news because these ETFs are allowing these niche coins the opportunity to be bought in traditional brokerage accounts. And I would say that a lot of us are pretty surprised that it happened in the middle of a government shutdown. But, it really was just this perfect storm of regulations that happened recently. First of all, the SEC released their new generic listing standards several weeks ago, which allowed these new ETFs to launch if they met certain criteria. One of that criteria was having associated futures trading for 6 months on a CFTC regulated market. So that's the path many of these issuers are taking when considering launch. And second, they were able to remove the delaying amendment from the registration statement, which basically just means that they could launch within 20 days without the final, some of that final SEC review steps. So we're seeing some more issuers take this pathway. There's some Solana funds, one from VanEck that updated its registration statement to sort of chase this process, and Canary has updated the same for their XRP product. So, that being said, I think there is some risk, obviously, if you're skipping some part of the SEC review, because once the SEC resumes operations, they can come back and they can make amendments to those registration statements. But I do think the chance of that happening is pretty slim, especially considering how much the SEC has been going back and forth already on these Solana products prior to the shutdown.
Okay, so it certainly seems like this industry has got a lot of tailwind this year, and certainly seems to be a lot more sort of appetite and excitement around the space. But not to put a dampener on things, I'm just reading off the back of what CoinDesk has been saying this morning in their vibe check, saying really the mood in crypto is one of resigned feeling, hunkering down, wondering where summer went. And with the government shutdown, crypto legislative processes are being paused. And obviously we're not getting a lot of clarity also from the Fed, who said that the December cut is not a foregone conclusion. So I suppose with all that in mind, how are you thinking about where we're at on the macro front and with this government shutdown? I mean, is it holding up anything, or is it status quo for the crypto space?
Yeah, I think there's two sort of opposing stories happening here. I think, on the altcoin front, there is quite a bit of holdup because of that government shutdown, and I would say uncertainty and lack of clarity. So that hasn't yet even really become a mainstream story, although we're building towards that. If you look at Bitcoin, I would say that's a completely different story. I mean, Bitcoin has made some huge steps lately, just in terms of investors and advisors coming to accept it. Verify actually did a recent survey, and we surveyed advisors, and 53% of those advisors surveyed said they'd be slightly more interested or significantly more interested in allocating to Bitcoin because of the current regulatory environment. And that doesn't include the 28% that said that they were already interested in Bitcoin. So, Bitcoin has seen these significant milestones. If you look at the ETF flows, it certainly reflects that. As a group, Bitcoin ETFs saw about 26 billion in net inflows year to date. Bitcoin, the iShares product IBIT has seen about 28 billion of net inflows. And moving more to the altcoins, like I said, it's a little bit of a different story. Ether, if you look at that, it's had about 12 billion in net inflows. So positive, but less than half of what we're seeing in Bitcoin. So we can assume that we will keep seeing sort of, cooling off with some of this altcoin ETF flows, especially in the beginning. But I expect that to pick up as, adoption grows in later months and coming years.
Roxanna, have you got any thoughts? We've just got the price of Bitcoin up right now, 107,000 at the moment, down 2% in trade today. Can you sort of speak to the performance in recent weeks? I mean, we all know what happened on October the 10th with that whole risk-off sort of sell-off with basically equities, Bitcoin across the board. But I'm just wondering, while we have certainly seen stocks recovering from that day, Bitcoin almost feels like the price has been sort of stuck in this kind of band around the 110,000 level and can't really gain momentum past that. Do you have any idea why?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin it's very sensitive to the macro environment. So we are seeing, some uncertainty and a lack of clarity going back to what we talked about with the government shutdown. So I think that's been sort of a weight on the price of Bitcoin. We've sort of seen it hover around that, $110,000 range over the past few weeks. But I think long term, it definitely still has, some room to run. I think, we're seeing a lot of good signs in the market, not just for Bitcoin, but for the overall crypto industry. I mean, we just heard news, a few weeks ago about T. Rowe Price becoming a late entrant into the crypto ETF space. So I think things like that will become big drivers as time goes on, and it proves that a lot of the big players, especially, still think that there's room to run in the industry.
Okay, we'll be watching. Thank you so much for your time, Roxanna. We're going to have to leave it there, getting us across the crypto space there. Roxanna Islam, Head of Sector and Industry Research at TMX Verify, joining me. Appreciate your time.